She was the most careful hunter anyone had ever seen. Kaya checked the wind before every approach. She waited an extra hour when something felt wrong. She was still alive at an age most hunters never reached, and everyone in her camp knew exactly why. Then, one season, without warning, she stopped being that person. She walked closer to the tree line than she used to. She stopped waiting out the storms. And one afternoon, she did something that should have been impossible. For the woman everyone thought they knew. She approached a wounded boar, alone. A boar with nothing left to lose doesn't run. It charges, it gores. It kills a careless hunter in seconds. And Kaya had taught that exact lesson to half the younger hunters in her group. She walked toward it anyway. The boar turned, it charged, and only because two other hunters were close enough to throw their spears in time, Kaya walked away with a torn leg instead of a torn throat. She survived that day, but something else didn't. Here's what nobody in that camp could have possibly known. Kaya wasn't reckless. She wasn't losing her mind, and she hadn't lost her nerve. Something was living inside her brain, something microscopic, something that had been there for years, quietly rewriting the way fear worked inside her head, one signal at a time. She never felt sick, no fever, no wound. Nothing that would have told her, or anyone around that fire, that anything was wrong at all. And the strangest part of this story is this. It might still be happening to you right now, and you'd have no way of knowing either. This is 30,000 years ago. And the thing that changed Kaya has never actually gone away. Scientists have a name for it now, Toxoplasma gondii. But for most of human history, we had no idea it even existed, because it doesn't leave the kind of evidence archaeologists usually look for. No fractures, no damaged bone. Soft tissue disappears within years of death, and whatever was living in someone's brain simply vanishes along with it, leaving nothing behind to find. It took ancient DNA pulled from soil and fossilized waste and rare preserved tissue before researchers finally found the trail. And what it revealed was unsettling. This parasite has been traveling alongside humans and the ancestors before us for millions of years, long before Homo sapiens existed as a species at all, which means Kaya wasn't unlucky. She was carrying something that had been quietly riding inside human brains since before humans were fully human. But here's what makes this so much stranger than an ordinary infection. This parasite doesn't just live in a host. It changes what the host is afraid of. Toxoplasma gondii can only complete its life cycle inside the gut of a cat, but it can infect almost any warm-blooded animal along the way, and it needs a way back into a cat to finish the job. So evolution gave it a shortcut. Researchers studying infected rodents found something that sounds almost impossible. Rats and mice infected with this parasite stop fearing the smell of cat urine. Some studies found infected rodents were actually drawn toward it instead of running from it. That's not a side effect. That is a microscopic organism reaching directly into an animal's brain and rewriting its fear, specifically so the animal will walk toward the one thing that will kill it, because that's exactly what the parasite needs to reproduce. And somewhere in Kaya's tissue, years before that boar ever charged her, the exact same organism had already settled in and started waiting. Now think about what actually happened in that camp after the boar attack. 2 hunters had nearly died throwing themselves between Kaya and its tusks. One carried a scar across his forearm for the rest of his life. The camp had just risked 3 lives because someone they had trusted completely for years had suddenly, inexplicably stopped acting like herself. Trust doesn't recover quickly from that. In a group of 20 or 30 people, where every hunt depended on knowing exactly how the person beside you would behave under pressure, Kaya had just become something far more dangerous than an injured hunter. She'd become unpredictable. People started keeping their distance, quietly at first. Fewer hunting invitations. conversations that ended a little too fast. She wasn't exiled, not yet, but she could feel the shape of what exile would look like, forming around her one small silence at a time. Nobody in that camp had a name for what was actually happening to her. All they had was fear, and fear, in a world with no room for mistakes, moves fast. Humans aren't even this parasite's actual target. We're what scientists call a dead-end host, a place it survives but can't complete its full life cycle. And yet the same mechanism that erases fear in a rodent's brain appears to produce something similar in us. Multiple studies have found correlations between infection and increased risk-taking, slower reaction times, even a higher rate of certain accidents. Subtle, statistical, still genuinely debated by researchers today, but subtle was never going to matter to Kaya's camp. They didn't need a study. They needed to know if she could still be trusted with their lives, and they just watched the answer nearly cost 2 men everything. This parasite never went away. Right now, current estimates suggest roughly a third of the entire world's population is carrying it, most without any idea it's there. Somewhere today, someone is gardening without gloves or eating undercooked meat at a barbecue, and they will never know that this exact moment introduced a lifelong hitchhiker into their brain. The same moment Kaya lived through 30,000 years ago, still happening right now to someone with absolutely no idea. Modern medicine can test for it with a simple blood test. Most healthy people never need treatment at all. But for pregnant women and anyone with a weakened immune system, this same quiet parasite can become genuinely dangerous, which is exactly why doctors specifically warn pregnant women about litter boxes and undercooked meat. The difference between Kaya, isolated by her own camp for a change nobody could explain, and a modern pregnant woman protected by one blood test, isn't the parasite, it's information. Kaya's story didn't end quietly. A few weeks later, during a group hunt, she broke formation again, chasing an elk alone into a ravine everyone else knew to avoid. She came back alive. The elk didn't. But the older hunter who had saved her from the boar refused to hunt beside her again. He told the group plainly, around the fire that night, that he would rather go hungry than risk his life a second time for someone who no longer thought like a hunter should. Nobody argued with him. That was the night Kaya's isolation stopped being quiet. She still ate at the same fire. She still slept in the same camp. But she hunted alone now, by unspoken agreement, because the alternative was asking someone else to bet their life on a person the group could no longer predict. She never chose this. She had no way of knowing something microscopic, sitting in her own tissue for years, was quietly rewriting her decisions into something that looked exactly like recklessness. Would they have treated her differently if they'd known? Or would fear have won anyway because a group that stops being cautious about what it can't predict doesn't survive the next winter? Scientists who study this kind of parasite call it one of the most humbling discoveries in modern biology. The idea that something as fundamental as courage, caution, even free will itself, might occasionally be steered by an organism too small to see, one that isn't trying to hurt you, is simply following programming older than our entire species. You like to believe every choice you make is entirely your own. For roughly a third of the people alive right now, that might not be completely true. And for Kaya, standing at the edge of her own camp's trust, it almost certainly wasn't. We don't know what eventually happened to her, whether she died alone on a hunt nobody agreed to join, or slowly earned back a trust that never should have been lost in the first place. But somewhere in that uncertainty is the real weight of this story. Kaya wasn't punished for a choice. She was isolated for a change in her own brain chemistry that neither she nor anyone around that fire could ever have named. You might be carrying the exact same organism right now, and somewhere, in some small way, someone close to you might already be pulling back from a version of you that was never entirely your own doing.